The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Maya Lin shifted the heavy paper bag of groceries to her other hip, digging for her keys with cold, trembling fingers. It was only 5 p.m., but the sky was already a bruised shade of charcoal. Her back ached from 10 hours hunched over a terminal at the archives, digitizing old city records for a wage that barely covered the rent of this fourth-floor walk-up. She just wanted to get inside, heat up some soup, and wait for Mrs. Gable to drop Noah off from kindergarten. She slid the key into the lock, but the metal tumblers didn't click. The knob turned freely in her hand. Maya froze. She knew she had locked it. She checked it twice every morning, a habit born of paranoia and the terrifying responsibility of raising a child alone. Noah. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in her chest. She pushed the door open inches at a time, the hinges groaning in the silent hallway. "Mrs. Gable?" she called out, her voice barely a whisper. There was no answer. The apartment was dark, smelling of stale rain and something else. Something expensive. Sandalwood and expensive tobacco. Maya dropped the grocery bag. A jar of pasta sauce shattered, red splatter blooming across the cheap linoleum like a crime scene, but she didn't look down. Her eyes were fixed on the living room. A man was sitting in her recliner, the one with the fraying fabric where she read Noah bedtime stories. He was dressed in a suit that cost more than her entire life's earnings, his legs crossed casually, his face obscured by the shadows. "Close the door, Maya," the man said. His voice was smooth like velvet over gravel. Maya didn't move. She calculated the distance to the kitchen knife block. 10 feet. Too far. "Who are you? Where is my son?" The man lifted a hand. He wasn't holding a gun. He was holding a tablet. The screen glowed bright in the dim room, illuminating his sharp, patrician features and silver-streaked hair. "Come look," he commanded gently. Maya's legs moved on their own. She stepped over the broken glass and approached him, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She looked down at the screen. It was a live video feed. A playground. The timestamp in the corner was current, counting up the seconds. In the center of the frame, a small boy in a yellow raincoat was crouching by a puddle, intently floating a leaf boat. "Noah. He's very focused," the man said, sounding almost like a proud grandfather. "He solved a puzzle cube in under 2 minutes while waiting for the bus. Remarkable intelligence for a 6-year-old. Maya lunged for the tablet, but the man pulled it back effortlessly. "Don't," he warned. The kindness evaporated from his voice, replaced by cold steel. "My men are parked 2 streets away from the school. Mrs. Gable is running late today. If I give the order, they pick him up before she arrives. And you never see him again." Maya fell to her knees, the damp cold of the floor seeping into her jeans. "Please. I don't have money. I don't have anything." "You have a skill set," the man corrected. "You were the best encryption breaker in the state before you disappeared into motherhood." He finally turned the tablet off and set it on the side table. "I am Julian Sterling. And I have a job for you." Maya shook her head, tears hot and stinging in her eyes. "I'm not a criminal. I archive maps. I don't dash." "You will be whatever I need you to be," Julian interrupted. "Tonight is the Iron Ports Gala. Hosted by Kaelen Thorne." The name sucked the air out of the room. Kaelen Thorne. The ghost. The man who owned the shipping docks, half the tech sector and the police force. "You didn't steal from Kaelen Thorne. You didn't even look him in the eye. You want me to rob Kaelen Thorne?" Maya choked out. "That's a suicide mission. There is a server room in his penthouse. It is air-gapped. Biometric locks. Unhackable from the outside," Julian explained calmly. "You will go in as a catering server. You will access the terminal. You will insert this." He placed a small silver flash drive on the table next to the tablet. "If you get caught, he kills me," Maya whispered. Julian leaned forward, his eyes dead and devoid of light. "If you refuse, I take the boy. If you fail, I take the boy. If you go to the police, I take the boy." He stood up, buttoning his jacket, towering over her huddled form. "Kaelen Thorne might kill you, Maya." "That is a possibility," Julian said, stepping over the spilled sauce on his way to the door. "But I will erase your son from existence. Choose your monster." The door clicked shut behind him. Maya stared at the silver flash drive glinting in the dark. The silence of the apartment was deafening, broken only by the sound of her own ragged breathing. She reached out and closed her hand around the cold metal drive. She had no choice. She was going to rob the devil to save her angel. The penthouse of the needle-thin Thorne Tower was suspended in the clouds, detached from the rotting city below. Inside, the air smelled of white orchids and money. A string quartet played something mournful and expensive in the corner, the sound barely rising above the low hum of conversation from Seattle's elite. Senators, tech moguls, and shipping magnates held crystal flutes of champagne, oblivious to the storm battering the floor-to-ceiling glass walls. Maya Lin adjusted the high collar of her catering uniform. It scratched at her throat, a constant reminder that she was an imposter in a room full of sharks. "Champagne, sir?" she asked, keeping her eyes lowered as she offered a tray to a man with a thick neck and a thicker wallet. "Keep walking," he dismissed her without looking. Perfect. Being invisible was the only armor she had. Maya moved through the crowd, her heart beating a frantic rhythm against her ribs. 1 hour. Julian Sterling had given her a window of 1 hour before the security protocols on the private elevator reset. She had wasted 20 minutes just getting past the kitchen checkpoint. She scanned the room looking for the door. According to the blueprints Julian had forced her to memorize, the server room wasn't in the office wing. It was behind the master suite. Kaelen Thorne kept his data close, like a dragon sleeping on its gold. "Excuse me," she murmured, slipping past a woman in a red backless gown. She reached the service corridor that led to the private quarters. A large man in a dark suit stood by the velvet rope, his earpiece coiled like a snake behind his ear. Maya gripped her tray tighter. "Do it. For Noah." She stumbled. It was calculated, a precise misstep she'd practiced in her bathroom mirror. She lurched forward, sending 3 flutes of champagne cascading onto the guard's polished shoes. "Oh God. I am so sorry." Maya gasped, dropping to her knees and frantically dabbing at his pants with a cocktail napkin. "I tripped the carpet, please don't report me." The guard swore, stepping back and shaking his leg. "Get off. Watch where you're going. I'll get club soda. Right away." Before he could grab her or radio for backup, Maya scrambled up and darted not back toward the kitchen, but past him around the corner into the dim hallway. She heard him shouting at a passing cleaner, distracted by the mess. He was in. The noise of the party faded instantly, replaced by a heavy, pressurized silence. The hallway was lined with dark mahogany and modern art that looked like violent slashes of paint on canvas. Maya didn't run. Running attracted attention on cameras. She walked with purpose, counting the doors. 1, 2, 3. The master suite. She reached the heavy double doors. There was a biometric pad next to the handle. Julian had provided a cloned thumbprint on a synthetic film, but the keypad required a 6-digit code that changed daily. Maya pulled a small device from her apron pocket, a brute force decoder she'd built herself from spare radio parts years ago. She pressed it against the panel. Seconds ticked by. Sweat gathered at the base of her spine. If Kaelen Thorne came down this hallway. Beep. Green light. Maya slipped inside and locked the door behind her. The suite was massive, a cavern of glass and steel overlooking the stormy Puget Sound. It was sterile. There were no personal photos, no clutter. It looked like a showroom or a prison cell made of luxury. She moved to the far wall, finding the hidden panel behind a generic abstract painting. There was the server room door. This lock was harder. Encryption. Maya's fingers flew across the interface she connected to the port. This was her world. Not guns, not threats, but logic, gates, and code. She bypassed the firewall in 40 seconds. The door hissed open. A blast of freezing air hit her. The server room was small, bathed in aggressive blue light from the towering racks of hardware. The hum was deafening here, the sound of millions of terabytes of data flowing through the veins of the city. Maya approached the main terminal. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the silver flash drive. "Just plug it in. Upload the virus. Get out." She reached for the port, but her gaze snagged on something sitting on the small desk beside the terminal. It was out of place. Amidst the high-tech machinery there was a simple wooden picture frame. Maya hesitated. She knew she shouldn't look. He should be a machine. But curiosity was a flaw she couldn't patch. She tilted the frame. It wasn't a photo of Kaelen Thorne. It was two boys. One was older, maybe 10, with dark, serious eyes. He had his arm protectively around a smaller boy, maybe 4 years old, who was laughing, missing a front tooth. They looked happy. They looked human. Maya felt a pang in her chest. She recognized the look in the older boy's eyes. It was the same look she gave Noah every morning. I will burn the world to keep you safe. She knew Kaelen Thorne had a brother. Rumor said the boy had died in a kidnapping gone wrong 10 years ago. Rumor said that was the day Kaelen Thorne stopped being a man and became a ghost. I'm sorry, she whispered to the photo, her guilt rising like bile. But I have to save my boy. She turned back to the terminal and jammed the flash drive into the port. A red light flashed on the screen. Access denied. Maya frowned. No. That's impossible. She typed frantically. Bypass authorization. System lockdown initiated. The blue lights in the room turned a harsh, warning red. The hum of the servers stopped abruptly, plunging the room into a terrifying silence. Then came the sound. The sound of the door she had just entered locking from the outside. Maya spun around, her back hitting the desk. The door didn't open. Instead, a section of the glass wall to her right, which she had assumed was a window, turned opaque and then transparent again. He was standing there. He must have been in the suite the whole time. Watching. Waiting. Kaelen Thorne was taller than he looked in the papers. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo jacket, just a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle. He held a glass of whiskey in one hand, looking bored. He tapped a button on the wall and his voice filled the server room over an intercom. It was deep, calm, and terrifyingly devoid of anger. You have excellent coding syntax, he said, taking a slow sip of his drink. But your left flank was wide open. Maya's breath hitched. She looked for a weapon. Keyboard? Cable? Who sent you? Kaelen asked. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. I won't tell you, Maya said, though her voice trembled. Kaelen tilted his head, studying her through the glass like a scientist observing a rat in a maze. His eyes were the color of the storm outside, gray and turbulent. They all say that, he murmured. Until I open the door. He pressed the release button. The glass partition slid open with a smooth hiss. There was no barrier between them now. Just 10 feet of expensive carpet and the weight of his predatory gaze. Maya grabbed a letter opener from the desk, a pathetic, dull piece of brass. She held it up with shaking hands. Stay back. I'll scream. There are 100 people just down the hall. Kaelen actually smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. It was a sharp, dangerous thing. He took a step forward. Scream all you want, little thief. The soundproofing in this room cost more than your life is worth. He closed the distance in 2 long strides. Before Maya could even slash with the letter opener, he caught her wrist. His grip was like iron, immovable and hot against her cold skin. He didn't twist it, he just held her, forcing her to look up at him. You have 3 seconds, Kaelen whispered, leaning down until she could smell the whiskey and rain on him. Tell me who sent you or I will dismantle you piece by piece to find the answer. My son, Maya choked out, the tears finally spilling over. He has my son. Kaelen froze. His gaze flickered over her shoulder to the wooden picture frame she had touched. The frame of him and his dead brother. The grip on her wrist didn't loosen, but the air in the room shifted. The predator paused. Assault? Kaelen repeated, his voice dropping an octave, turning into a low growl. Start talking. The silence that followed Maya's confession was heavier than the storm raging outside. Kaelen didn't let go of her wrist. If anything, his grip tightened, his thumb pressing against the frantic pulse point on the inside of her arm. He wasn't looking at her anymore. His gaze was locked on the picture frame she had disturbed. A son, he repeated, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. He finally looked back at her. The boredom was gone from his eyes, replaced by a cold, calculating intensity that was infinitely worse. Is he the reason you broke into my home? Or is he just a convenient lie to keep me from snapping your neck? I'm not lying. Maya gasped, trying to twist her arm free. It was like trying to break free from a steel trap. Julian Sterling. He came to my apartment. He showed me a live feed of Noah. He said if I didn't get the drive, he'd erase him. At the name Julian Sterling, Kaelen's expression darkened. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He released her wrist so abruptly she stumbled back against the server rack. Sterling, Kaelen growled, running a hand through his dark hair. Of course. The old vulture is getting desperate. He turned his back on her, walking to the desk and tapping a sequence into a sleek black console. What are you doing? Maya asked, rubbing her bruised wrist. I need to go. If I'm not out in 20 minutes with that drive dash. If you walk out that door with my data, Julian Sterling will kill you and your son just to tie up loose ends, Kaelen said without looking up. His fingers flew across a holographic keyboard. You are a loose end, Maya. Sterling doesn't leave witnesses. He leaves corpses. Maya felt the blood drain from her face. No. He promised dash. He lied, Kaelen cut her off. He hit a final key and turned to face her. You have two choices. You can run. I'll let you go. You'll hand him the drive and you'll both be dead by sunrise. He stepped closer, towering over her, his presence suffocating. Or, Maya whispered, her voice trembling. Or you give me the drive, Kaelen said, holding out his hand. And you pray that I'm in a charitable mood. Maya looked at the silver drive in her hand. Then at Kaelen's hard, unforgiving face. She thought of Noah, his laugh, his small hands. If she gave the drive to Kaelen, she failed Julian. If she failed Julian, Noah died. I can't, she sobbed, clutching the drive to her chest. He has men watching the school. Mrs. Gable is picking him up any minute. I can't take the risk. Kaelen studied her. He saw the terror in her eyes, the absolute feral desperation of a mother cornered. It stirred something in him, a ghost of a memory. A promise he had made over a small grave years ago. Never again. He tapped his earpiece. Vance. Bring the car around. Secure mode. And get a tactical team to St. Jude's kindergarten. Now. Maya's head snapped up. How do you know where he goes to school? I know everything that happens in this city, Kaelen said coldly. Especially when someone tries to rob me. He grabbed her arm again, this time pulling her toward the door. We're leaving. Leaving? The party dash. The party is over. Kaelen didn't take her back through the service entrance. He marched her straight through the main ballroom. He was a force of nature, parting the sea of socialites and billionaires with nothing but his aura of menace. Maya stumbled beside him, still in her catering uniform, head down, terrified that someone would stop them. But no one did. They were terrified of him. They reached the private elevator. Kaelen shoved her inside and keyed in a code. The doors slid shut, sealing them in a mirrored box. Why are you doing this? Maya asked, pressing herself into the corner as the elevator plummeted toward the garage. You don't know me. I tried to steal from you. Kaelen adjusted his cuffs, his face impassive. Julian Sterling made a mistake. What mistake? Kaelen looked at her and for a second the mask slipped. Maya saw a rage so deep, so ancient, it made her knees weak. He involved a child, Kaelen said softly. In my city. On my watch. The elevator doors pinged open. A sleek, armored black sedan was waiting, engine idling. A man with a scar running down his cheek opened the back door. Vance. Target acquired, boss, Vance said, his voice rough. Sterling's men are parked 2 blocks east of the school. Already von. They're waiting for the pickup. Kaelen pushed Maya into the back seat and climbed in beside her. Drive. The car roared to life, tires screeching against the polished concrete as they shot out of the garage and into the rainy Seattle night. Maya pulled her knees to her chest, shivering. Kaelen reached into a compartment next to him and pulled out a tablet. He tapped the screen and swiped it toward her. Is this him? Maya looked. It was a satellite feed thermal imaging. It showed a small heat signature sitting on a bench outside a school building. A larger heat signature, Mrs. Gable was walking toward him. But 2 other figures were approaching from the street. Noah, Maya breathed, touching the screen. Oh God, they're moving in. Vance, Kaelen said calmly. Green light. Maya watched in horror as the 2 figures on the screen quickened their pace toward the child. But before they could reach him, a black SUV smashed into the frame, T-boning the gray van parked nearby. 4 men in tactical gear swarmed the screen. The kidnappers didn't stand a chance. It was over in seconds. He's secure, Vance said from the front seat. Our team has the boy. Mrs. Gable is confused but safe. Maya let out a sob, collapsing back against the leather seat. The relief was so intense it was physically painful. He's safe. He's safe. She turned to Kaelen, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. I don't know how to dash. Kaelen didn't look at her. He was staring out the window at the blurred city lights. Don't thank me yet, Maya, he said, his voice devoid of warmth. He turned to her and the predator was back. You tried to steal my empire. You owe a debt to the iron ports now. Kaelen leaned in, trapping her with his gaze. And I always collect. Maya wiped her tears, her survival instinct kicking back in. What do you want? Kaelen's eyes dropped to the flash drive she was still clutching in her hand. Then he looked back up, a dark plan forming behind his gray irises. Julian Sterling will not stop, Kaelen said. He knows you failed. He will come for the boy again. And next time he won't be polite. I'll run, Maya said. I'll take Noah and run. You have no money. No resources. You won't make it past the city limits, Kaelen stated brutally. There is only one place Sterling cannot reach you. Where? Kaelen leaned back, the ghost of a smirk touching his lips. By penthouse, he said. You're not going back to your apartment, Maya. You and your son are coming home with me. Maya stared at him. As what? Your prisoner. Kaelen looked at her fierce eyes, her trembling hands, the defiance that still burned despite her fear. No, he said softly. As my wife. The ride back to the Thorne Tower was silent, save for the rhythmic thrum-thrum of the tires on wet asphalt. Maya held Noah against her chest in the back seat. He was asleep, exhausted from the confusion of being picked up by strange men in tactical gear who claimed they were friends of Mom. He smelled like crayons and rain, a scent that usually grounded her. Tonight it only terrified her. She had brought this upon him. Her debt. Her skills. Her desperation. We're here, Vance grunted from the front seat. The car slipped into the underground garage, bypassing the main entrance. This was a private bay reinforced with blast doors. Kaelen got out first. He adjusted his jacket, his face an unreadable mask of stone. He opened the back door for her, extending a hand. Do not wake him, Kaelen murmured, his voice surprisingly low. Vance will carry him. No, Maya snapped, pulling Noah closer. Nobody touches my son but me. Kaelen's hand hovered in the air for a second. His gray eyes assessed her, the fierce, trembling curve of her jaw, the way her nails dug into the leather seat. Fine, he said, dropping his hand. Suit yourself. The penthouse felt different this time. An hour ago, it had been a heist target, a place of adrenaline and fear. Now it was a sanctuary. Or a prison. Maya wasn't sure which. The party downstairs had ended, or at least moved on to the after-hours clubs. The silence in the master suite was absolute. Maya laid Noah down on the expansive king-sized bed in the guest room Kaelen had directed her to. It was stark white, devoid of color. She pulled the duvet up to his chin, brushing the hair off his forehead. I'm sorry, baby, she whispered. I'm so sorry. She stepped out into the hallway, leaving the door cracked open so she could hear him breathe. Kaelen was waiting for her in the living room. He had poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. He held one out to her as she approached. Drink, he commanded. You look like you're going to shatter. Maya took the glass but didn't drink. She set it down on the glass coffee table with a sharp clink. I want terms, she said, her voice steady despite the shaking in her legs. You said wife. You didn't explain what that means. Kaelen took a sip of his bourbon, watching her over the rim of the glass. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the city he ruled. It means protection, he said. Julian Sterling operates in the shadows. He respects strength. He respects territory. If you are just Maya Lin, archivist and single mother, you are prey. If you are Maya Thorne, wife of the ghost, you are untouchable. And what do you get? Maya asked, crossing her arms. You don't strike me as a man who runs a charity for damsels in distress. Kaelen turned. A flash of appreciation crossed his face at her sharpness. I am merging the iron ports with a legitimate cybersecurity firm next month, he explained, pacing slowly toward her. The board is skittish. They think I am too volatile. Too criminal. They want a family man. A stable figurehead. He stopped in front of her. I need a wife to clean my image. You need a monster to scare away the other monsters. It is a transaction, Maya. Nothing more. A marriage of convenience, she murmured. Like in the old world. Precisely. And Noah? Maya asked the most dangerous question of all. What happens to him? He lives here. He goes to the best private school in the city with my security detail. He wants for nothing. Maya studied him. Kaelen Thorne was beautiful in a terrifying way. Sharp angles, predatory grace, eyes that had seen too much darkness. And if I refuse? Then I open the front door, Kaelen said simply. And Julian Sterling will be waiting in the lobby. It wasn't a threat. It was a fact. Before Maya could respond, a small creak came from the hallway. They both froze. Noah was standing there, rubbing his eyes. He was wearing his dinosaur pajamas, looking tiny in the massive modern hallway. He clutched a Rubik's Cube in one hand, his security blanket. Mom, he mumbled. Where are we? Maya moved instantly, rushing to him and dropping to her knees. We're safe, Noah. Staying with a friend for a while. Remember the nice man who picked us up? Noah looked past her. His dark, intelligent eyes landed on Kaelen. Kaelen went rigid. Maya held her breath. She expected Kaelen to be dismissive or cold. He wasn't a father. He was a crime lord. But Kaelen slowly lowered his drink to the table. He didn't smile. Smiles were lies, but he crouched down. It was a fluid motion, bringing himself to Noah's eye level. I am Kaelen, he said, his voice dropping that rough, gravelly edge. This is my house. Noah stared at him, unblinking. He didn't seem scared. He seemed curious. He held up the Rubik's Cube. It was mixed up, a chaos of colors. Your house is very quiet, Noah observed. I like quiet, Kaelen replied. I like puzzles, Noah said. He offered the cube to Kaelen. Maya moved to intercept, terrified Kaelen would snap at the intrusion. Noah, honey, don't bother Mr. Thorne. Kaelen held up a hand to stop her. He reached out and took the cube. His large, scarred hands that Maya knew had pulled triggers and broken bones, held the plastic toy with surprising delicacy. Kaelen looked at the cube. Then he looked at Noah. Algorithm or intuition? Kaelen asked. Noah's eyes lit up. Friedrich method. But I get stuck on the last layer. A flicker of genuine surprise crossed Kaelen's face. The corners. Noah nodded. Kaelen's fingers moved. Click, clack, click. He twisted the cube with practiced speed, 3 sharp turns. He handed it back to Noah. The top layer was now a solid blue. You were thinking two-dimensionally, Kaelen said softly. Look at the axis. Noah looked at the cube, then beamed a bright missing tooth smile that lit up the sterile hallway. Whoa. Thanks. Kaelen stood up, the mask sliding back into place, but his eyes lingered on the boy for a second too long. There was a haunted look there. A grief that looked like a physical wound. He looked at Maya. He stays, Kaelen said, his voice rougher than before. We get married tomorrow. The courthouse. No guests. He turned and walked toward his study, not looking back. Lock the door when you go to bed, Maya, he called out over his shoulder. I have insomnia. And I don't like wandering guests. Maya stood in the hallway, watching the ghost retreat into his fortress. She looked down at Noah, who was happily twisting the cube. Is he the monster, Mom? Noah whispered, looking at the retreating figure. Maya stroked her son's hair. She thought of the way Kaelen had looked at the toy. The way he had known exactly how to fix it. I don't know, baby, she whispered. I think he might be the wall that keeps the monsters out. The wedding took exactly 10 minutes. It was held in a private judge's chambers, bypassing the lines and the spectators. Outside, the Seattle rain hammered against the gray stone of the municipal court, washing away any pretense of romance. Do you, Kaelen Thorne, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? The judge asked. He was an older man who owed Kaelen a gambling debt from 10 years ago. He didn't ask questions. Kaelen didn't look at the judge. He looked at Maya. She was wearing a simple cream blouse and black slacks, clothes she had pulled from her suitcase that morning. She looked pale, her hands trembling slightly where they were clasped in front of her. I do, Kaelen said. His voice was a heavy door slamming shut. And do you, Maya Lynn? Maya hesitated. She felt the weight of Kaelen's gaze on the side of her face. It was heavy, heated, and demanding. Say it, his eyes seemed to command. Seal the contract. She thought of Noah safe in the penthouse with Vance watching cartoons. "I do," she whispered. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." Kaelen turned to her. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a ring. It wasn't a delicate band. It was a thick platinum ring set with a single massive square-cut diamond. It looked less like jewelry and more like a shackle. He took her left hand. His skin was warm, his grip firm. "This stays on," he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. "In public. In private. In the shower. You take it off and you signal to the world that you are unprotected." He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. He was the ghost. He didn't make errors in calculation. "You may kiss the bride," the judge mumbled, signing the paperwork. Maya stiffened. They hadn't discussed this part. Kaelen didn't ask for permission. He stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her jaw. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, a strangely tender gesture that was at odds with his cold demeanor. He leaned down. Maya closed her eyes, bracing herself. His lips brushed hers dry, firm and chaste. It wasn't a kiss of passion. It was a brand. A claim. "Mean it." He pulled back before she could even breathe. "Done," Kaelen said to the judge. "Send the papers to my office." 2 weeks later, the Museum of Flight was transformed into a glittering cavern of light and sound for the annual Future of Tech Gala. It was the perfect stage for Kaelen Thorne to debut his new life. Maya stood in front of the full-length mirror in the penthouse dressing room. The dress Kaelen had suggested, which meant ordered, was a floor-length gown of midnight blue silk. It clung to every curve, elegant but modest, with a slit that offered just a glimpse of leg when she walked. She touched the platinum ring on her finger. It felt heavier every day. "You look terrifying," a small voice said. Maya spun around. Noah was sitting on the rug wearing a tiny clip-on tie. "Terrifying?" Maya laughed, the tension in her chest loosening slightly. "I was going for nice, but—" "No, terrifying is good," Noah said seriously, looking up from his tablet. "Like a queen in a chess game. The queen is the most powerful piece." Kaelen appeared in the doorway. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin, accentuating the width of his shoulders. He adjusted his cufflinks, his eyes sweeping over Maya with a clinical appreciation that made her skin prickle. "The boy is right," Kaelen said. "Queens protect the king. But tonight you just need to smile." He walked over to Noah. "Vance is in charge tonight. No video games past 9. "Can I access the server logs?" Noah asked hopefully. "Read a book, Noah," Kaelen said, but there was a hint of a smirk on his lips. He offered his arm to Maya. "Shall we, Mrs. Thorne? The wolves are waiting." The gala was a blur of flashing cameras and forced smiles. Kaelen never left her side. His hand rested permanently on the small of her back, a heated weight that guided her, steadied her, and warned anyone approaching that she was taken. They moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations. Maya played the part perfectly, the shy, intelligent wife who had tamed the beast. "They buy it," Kaelen murmured in her ear as he handed her a glass of sparkling water. "Look at them. They're terrified of you because I'm standing next to you." "They're staring at the diamond," Maya corrected. "They think I'm a gold digger." "Let them think what they want. As long as they don't touch." Maya turned to set her glass on a high-top table, briefly breaking contact with Kaelen to adjust her shoe. "Mrs. Thorne," a voice purred from behind her. Or should I say Ms. Lynn? The blood froze in Maya's veins. She knew that voice. Velvet over gravel. She turned slowly. Julian Sterling was standing there. He held a flute of champagne, looking every bit the distinguished older gentleman. No one around them knew he was a monster who traded in flesh and fear. "Julian," Maya whispered. She looked around frantically for Kaelen, but a senator had cornered him a few feet away. "You clean up nicely, Maya," Julian said, stepping into her personal space. He smelled of sandalwood and rot. "I must admit, I didn't think you had it in you. Marrying the ghost to save the brat? Dramatic." "Stay away from us," Maya hissed. "Kaelen knows. He knows everything." "Does he?" Julian smiled, a cold baring of teeth. "Does he know about the other secret, Maya? The one in your medical files?" Maya's heart stopped. "What are you talking about?" "The boy," Julian whispered, leaning in closer, his hand reaching out to brush a stray lock of hair from her shoulder. He's special. More special than you know. And Kaelen won't be able to keep him when the truth comes out. His fingers grazed the bare skin of her arm. Suddenly, Julian was jerked backward. It happened so fast Maya barely registered it. One moment Julian was touching her, the next he was stumbling back, his champagne splashing onto his suit. Kaelen was there. He hadn't shouted. He hadn't made a scene. He had simply inserted himself between them, a wall of black wool and fury. Kaelen, Julian corrected his posture, smiling smoothly. I was just congratulating the bride. You were touching my wife, Kaelen said. His voice was terrifyingly quiet. The people nearby stopped talking, sensing the sudden drop in atmospheric pressure. A friendly gesture, Julian shrugged. Kaelen took a step forward. He towered over the older man. If you ever, Kaelen enunciated, reach for her again, friendly or otherwise, I will remove the offending hand. Do you understand? Julian's smile faltered. He looked at Kaelen's eyes and saw the violence waiting just behind the surface. Understood, Julian said tightly. Enjoy the honeymoon phase, Thorne. It rarely lasts. Julian turned and disappeared into the crowd. Maya let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Her knees shook. Kaelen turned to her immediately. He didn't ask if she was okay. He grabbed her hand, checking the skin where Julian had touched her, as if looking for a burn. Did he say anything? Kaelen demanded. He was just threatening me, Maya lied. She couldn't tell him about the comment about Noah's medical files. She didn't even know what it meant herself. He wanted to scare me. Kaelen's jaw clenched. He looked at the exit. We're leaving, Kaelen said. But the board members, you need to secure the merger, Maya argued. We can't leave yet. Kaelen looked at her. The possessiveness in his eyes was raw, unmasked. The merger can burn, he growled, pulling her against his side. No one threatens my family in my house. Family. The word hung in the air between them, heavy and confusing as he marched her out of the ballroom, shielding her from the flashing lights. The silence in the armored sedan on the way back from the gala was vibrating with tension. Kaelen hadn't let go of Maya's hand since they left the ballroom. His grip was bruising, his eyes scanning the rainy streets for threats only he could see. He knows something, Maya whispered, breaking the silence. Julian. He said Noah was special in a way I didn't know. Kaelen didn't look at her. Julian Sterling says many things to unsettle his enemies. It's a tactic. It felt like a promise. Kaelen's phone buzzed, a harsh, singular vibration against the leather console. He answered it on speaker. Report. Boss, Vance's voice crackled, sounding out of breath. We have a code black at the Sector 4 data farm. Physical breach. They bypassed the perimeter. Kaelen's expression turned into a mask of ice. Sector 4 wasn't just a warehouse. It was the nerve center for the Iron Port's logistics. If Julian took it, he could ground every ship in Kaelen's fleet. I'm 10 minutes out, Kaelen said. Lock it down. We can't, Vance shouted over the sound of gunfire in the background. They're using a jammer. The remote override isn't working. They're going to wipe the drives manually. Kaelen cursed, a sharp Russian word Maya didn't understand. He hung up and looked at the driver. Sector 4. Step on it. No, Maya said, her mind racing. You can't go there. It's a trap. It's my empire, Maya. I don't let thieves take what is mine. You can't stop a manual wipe with guns. Maya argued, grabbing his arm. If they have a jammer, you need to isolate the subnet from the inside. I can do it. Kaelen looked at her as if she were insane. You are staying in the car. I'm the best hacker you've ever met, remember? Maya's eyes blazed. I broke into your penthouse. Let me help you save your company. Or do you want Julian to win? The car swerved around a corner, the warehouse district looming ahead like a graveyard of steel and concrete. Smoke was already rising from one of the buildings. Kaelen looked at the fire, then at Maya. He weighed the risk. Stay behind me, he ordered, pulling a handgun from a hidden compartment under his seat. He racked the slide. If I say run, you run. If I say duck, you duck. Do you understand? Yes. The warehouse was chaos. Kaelen kicked the side door open, moving with a lethal grace that terrified Maya. He wasn't the businessman in a tuxedo anymore. He was the ghost. He took down 2 men in the hallway before Maya even registered they were threats to sharp cracks of his weapon, and they dropped. He didn't pause. He moved forward, shielding Maya with his body, pushing her toward the server room at the back. 3 minutes, Kaelen growled over the deafening alarm. Get the network back online so Vance can deploy the countermeasures. Maya scrambled to the terminal. The screen was flashing red. System purge imminent. They're using a worm, she muttered, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The adrenaline made her focus razor sharp. It's eating the encryption keys. Behind her, the sound of glass shattering echoed. Contact! Kaelen shouted. He shoved Maya down behind the heavy metal desk just as bullets sparked against the server racks. Maya covered her head, typing blindly with one hand while keeping her head down. She could hear Kaelen returning fire, the brass casings hitting the floor near her boots. Status! Kaelen roared, firing 2 shots over the desk. Almost, got it. Maya shouted back. I'm isolating the node. Now. She hit the final key. The red lights on the servers turned a steady, reassuring blue. The alarm cut off, replaced by the mechanical whir of the cooling fans kicking into overdrive. It's done. The data is safe. We're moving. Kaelen grabbed her by the back of her dress, hauling her up. But they weren't fast enough. A man emerged from the shadows on the catwalk above, a rifle raised. He wasn't aiming at Kaelen. He was aiming at Maya. Maya froze. Kaelen didn't. He didn't fire. He didn't shout. He threw himself across her, his heavy body slamming her back into the alcove of the server rack just as the rifle cracked. A sickening thud sound echoed, followed by a grunt near her ear. Kaelen's body jerked against hers. Kaelen! Maya gasped. Kaelen raised his gun and fired a single impossible shot upward. The man on the catwalk fell. Silence returned to the warehouse, heavy and smelling of ozone and blood. Kaelen pulled back slightly. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. There was a dark stain spreading rapidly across the white dress shirt under his tuxedo jacket, just above his left shoulder. You're shot, Maya whispered, her hands hovering over the wound. Oh God, you're shot. It's through and through, Kaelen gritted out, holstering his weapon with a grimace. Can you walk? Can I walk? You're bleeding out. I've had worse, he lied. He grabbed her hand with his good arm, his grip iron-tight but shaking slightly. We leave. No. Before reinforcements arrive. Back at the penthouse, the atmosphere was grim. Vance had a field medic kit open on the kitchen island. Kaelen sat on a bar stool, stripped to the waist, a glass of whiskey in his hand while Vance stitched the wound. He hadn't made a sound, though his knuckles were white where he gripped the marble counter. Maya stood nearby, still in her ruined gala dress, wiping Kaelen's blood off her hands with a wet towel. You took that bullet for me, she said softly. It wasn't a question. Kaelen opened his eyes. The pain meds were kicking in, making his gray eyes hazy but intense. You are my wife, he rasped. By responsibility. It's a contract, Kaelen, Maya argued, her voice cracking. You didn't have to. The contract says I protect what is mine, Kaelen cut her off. He looked at her, really looked at her, stripping away the layers of defiance. And you are valuable to the Empire. You saved the data. I saved the data. You saved my life. She stepped closer, ignoring Vance, and placed a hand gently on Kaelen's uninjured shoulder. His skin was burning hot. Thank you, she whispered. For a moment the ghost looked human. He leaned his head slightly into her touch, a moment of weakness he would never admit to. The elevator doors chimed, breaking the spell. Vance's second-in-command, a tech specialist named Rico, hurried in. He held a tablet, looking pale. Boss, Rico said, hesitating when he saw Maya. You asked me to run a deep dive on Julian's comments at the gala. About the boy's medical files. Kaelen straightened up, wincing as the stitches pulled. Speak. We hacked the fertility clinic records. The one Ms. Lin used 6 years ago, Rico said, glancing nervously at Maya. Maya frowned. I used an anonymous donor. It was a standard procedure. It wasn't random, Maya, Rico said quietly. We cross-referenced the donor ID with the old city crime databases. Kaelen's eyes narrowed. Who is the father? Rico turned the tablet around so they could both see the file. The donor sample was frozen 20 years ago, Rico explained. It belonged to Dante Moretti. The room went dead silent. Maya looked confused. Who is Dante Moretti? Kaelen stood up, ignoring the blood seeping through his fresh bandage. His face was a mask of horror and realization. Dante Moretti, Kaelen whispered, was the old king. The dawn of the Seattle Mafia before the syndicates took over. He died leaving behind a fortune in bearer bonds and crypto that no one could ever find. He looked at Maya and then toward the hallway where Noah was sleeping. The fortune is bio-locked, Kaelen realized, the pieces falling into place. Biometric security. Retinal scans. DNA verification. Maya felt the room spin. What are you saying? I'm saying Julian Sterling doesn't want Noah to hurt you, Kaelen said, his voice deadly. He wants Noah because Noah is the only living person who can open the vault. Kaelen walked over to Maya, gripping her shoulders. Your son isn't just a boy, Maya, Kaelen said grimly. He is the key to a billion-dollar empire. And Julian Sterling is coming to claim his inheritance. The revelation hung in the air like toxic smoke. Biometrics, Kaelen muttered, pacing the kitchen floor despite the fresh blood spotting his bandage. The old king was paranoid. He didn't trust banks. He built a vault beneath the old Federal Reserve. Everyone thought it was a myth. It's not a myth, Maya said, her voice hollow. It's my son. My son is the key to a vault. She looked toward the hallway. We have to wake him. We have to run. Run where? Kaelen stopped pacing. If Julian knows this, he has eyes on every exit, every airport, every highway. The moment we step outside this tower, we are exposed. We can't stay here. Maya cried. You said the penthouse was a fortress, but Julian has resources we didn't account for. Vance, Kaelen barked. Initiate Protocol 0. Full lockdown. Steel shutters on the windows. No one in or out until I vet every single member of the security detail. Vance nodded, tapping his earpiece. On it, boss. I'll clear the perimeter. Vance turned to leave, but Rico, the tech specialist who had delivered the news about the DNA, stayed by the console. He was typing furiously. Boss, Rico said, his voice trembling slightly. I'm trying to lock down the elevators, but the system isn't responding. Maya's head snapped up. Her hacker instincts flared. What do you mean not responding? Kaelen's system is hardwired. It's a loop, Rico said, sweat beading on his upper lip. Someone uploaded a kernel override. From the inside. Kaelen froze. He looked at the tablet in Rico's hand. Then he looked at Rico's face. From the inside, Kaelen repeated dangerously. I didn't. Rico stammered, backing away. Check his logs, Maya, Kaelen commanded. Maya rushed to the console, pushing Rico aside. She scanned the code cascading down the screen. Her blood ran cold. It's a backdoor, she whispered. Installed 10 minutes ago. It disabled the perimeter alarms and the elevator locks. She looked at Rico. You did this. While we were distracted with the DNA file. Rico pulled a gun. He wasn't fast enough. Kaelen didn't even blink. He threw the heavy crystal whiskey tumbler he had been holding. It smashed into Rico's face with a sickening crunch. Rico dropped the gun, howling in pain, blood pouring from his nose. Vance was on him in a second, pinning him to the ground. They paid me. Rico screamed, spitting teeth. Julian offered me $5 million. They're already here. They're in the elevator. Ding. The soft chime of the private elevator was the loudest sound in the world. The doors slid open. They didn't just walk in. A flashbang grenade rolled across the marble floor. Down. Kaelen roared. He tackled Maya behind the kitchen island just as the grenade detonated. A blinding white light seared the room, followed by a deafening bang that shattered the remaining windows. Ears ringing, Maya curled into a ball. She felt Kaelen move away from her. Stay here, he ordered. Through the smoke, shadows emerged. Men in gas masks and heavy body armor poured into the penthouse. They moved with military precision. This wasn't a gang hit. This was a black ops extraction. Kaelen was a blur of violence. Despite his shoulder wound, he moved like the ghost he was named for. He shot the first intruder point blank in the chest, then used the falling body as a shield to take down a second. Vance was firing from behind the sofa, providing cover. The boy, A distorted voice shouted from the smoke. Secure the asset. Noah. Maya didn't stay down. She didn't think. She scrambled on her hands and knees, keeping below the line of fire, crawling toward the hallway. Maya, no. Kaelen shouted, reloading his weapon. She ignored him. She reached the hallway and sprinted. She burst into the guest room. Noah. The bed was empty. The floor-to-ceiling glass panel had been cut. A perfect circle. Wind and rain whipped into the room. Rappelling lines hung from the roof. They hadn't come up the elevator. The elevator was a distraction. They had come from the roof. Maya ran to the window, leaning out into the storm. Below, on a balcony 3 floors down, she saw a man in black gear holding a small, struggling figure in dinosaur pajamas. Mom. Noah's scream was thin and terrified, swallowed by the wind. No. Maya screamed, climbing onto the ledge. A hand grabbed the back of her dress and yanked her back inside. He fought, clawing and kicking. Let me go. They have him. Maya, stop. You'll fall. It was Kaelen. He dragged her away from the window, pinning her to the floor as a hail of bullets shredded the doorframe. He looked out the window, his face contorted in a rage she had never seen. He raised his gun, aiming at the rappelling line, but he lowered it instantly. He couldn't risk hitting Noah. He watched, helpless, as the man on the balcony below hooked Noah onto a harness and disappeared into a waiting helicopter that hovered silently in the dark, rain-swept sky. The chopper banked sharp and vanished into the Seattle skyline. The penthouse was destroyed. Smoke hung in the air. The bodies of 3 intruders lay on the marble floor. Vance was bleeding from a graze on his temple, zip-tying a semi-conscious Rico to a chair. Maya sat on the floor of Noah's empty room, clutching the Rubik's Cube he had left on the nightstand. She wasn't crying. He was past crying. She was in a state of shock so deep it felt like death. Kaelen walked into the room. His shirt was soaked in fresh blood where his stitches had torn during the fight. He looked like a ruin of a man. He didn't say a word. He walked over to Maya and sat down on the floor beside her. He didn't try to touch her. He just sat there breathing heavily. He's gone, Maya whispered. I failed. I promised I would keep him safe and I failed. We were betrayed, Kaelen said, his voice like grinding stones. From within. I don't care. Maya screamed, throwing the Rubik's Cube. It hit the wall and shattered. He's 6 years old, Kaelen. He's with Julian. He's terrified and alone. She buried her face in her hands, her body shaking with violent sobs. Kaelen reached out then. He pulled her hands away from her face, forcing her to look at him. His gray eyes were burning with a cold, terrifying fire. Listen to me, he commanded. Julian needs him alive. He needs him to open the vault. Noah is safe as long as that vault remains locked. Julian will hurt him to make him cooperate. No, Kaelen said. Because Julian is going to be too busy dealing with me. Kaelen stood up. He walked to the window, looking out at the city that had taken her son. Vance, Kaelen called out, his voice carrying through the apartment. Boss. Vance appeared in the doorway. Call the syndicate. Call the Russians. Call the triads, Kaelen ordered. Tell them the ghost is calling in every debt. He turned back to Maya, offering her his hand. Get up, Maya. Maya looked at his hand. It was bloody. It was dangerous. What are we going to do? She asked, taking it. Kaelen pulled her to her feet. He didn't look like a businessman anymore. He looked like a war god. We are going to burn Julian Sterling's world to the ground, Kaelen vowed. And if he has touched a hair on that boy's head, I will make him beg for death. He squeezed her hand. I promised you protection, Kaelen whispered. I failed. Now I promise you vengeance. The beneath of Seattle was a labyrinth of forgotten tunnels, bootlegger routes and abandoned infrastructure. But Kaelen didn't need a map. He owned the city's secrets. The old Federal Reserve, Kaelen said, checking the magazine of his rifle in the back of the tactical van. The basement levels were decommissioned in the 90s. That's where the vault is. Maya sat across from him. She wasn't wearing a gown anymore. She was dressed in Vance's spare tactical gear black cargo pants and a Kevlar vest that was too big for her frame. On her lap sat a ruggedized laptop, its screen glowing with the schematics of the bank. I've bypassed the external perimeter cameras, Maya said, her voice devoid of fear. The shock had burned away, leaving only cold determination. But the sub-basement is completely off the grid. Once we go down, we're blind. We won't be blind, Kaelen said. He reached out and touched her cheek, smearing a smudge of grease. We'll be angry. It's better. The van screeched to a halt in an alleyway 3 blocks from the bank. Vance, Kaelen commanded into his comms. Take the team to the loading dock. Make noise. Draw their fire. Maya and I go in through the ventilation shaft. You're taking her with you? Vance argued. Boss, she's a civilian. She's the only one who can override the electronic locks if Julian seals the room, Kaelen said. He looked at Maya. And she's a mother. I'd be safer wrestling a bear than trying to stop her. The ventilation shaft was cramped, smelling of rust and old dust. They dropped down into the sub-basement corridor, weapons raised. They heard Noah before they saw him. I don't know the pattern. Noah was crying. I don't know how to do it. You're a smart boy, Julian's voice echoed, smooth and terrifying. Just look into the scanner. Keep your eyes open. Don't blink. Maya surged forward, but Kaelen grabbed her vest, holding her back against the wall. He held up 3 fingers. 3 guards. He moved. It was silent violence. Kaelen used a suppressor. Thwip. Thwip. 2 guards dropped. The 3rd turned, but Kaelen was already on him, a knife flashing in the dim light. They reached the heavy steel doors of the vault antechamber. It was open. Inside, the room was bathed in the green light of a massive circular vault door. In the center, Julian Sterling stood behind a chair. Noah was strapped to it, a retinal scanner positioned inches from his face. Let him go. Maya screamed, stepping into the light, her pistol raised with shaking hands. Julian smiled. He pulled a gun and pressed it to Noah's temple. Ah, the family reunion, Julian said. Right on time. Noah sobbed, his eyes squeezed shut. Mom, he wants my eyes. Open your eyes, boy. Julian shouted, jamming the gun harder into Noah's skin. The scanner needs a reading. Drop the weapon, Julian, Kaelen said, stepping out from the shadows. He looked battered, blood seeping through his shirt, but he held his rifle with rock-steady aim. You're surrounded. The iron ports hold the building. And I hold the key, Julian countered. This vault contains $5 billion in bearer bonds. With that money, I can buy my way out of hell itself. He looked at Maya. Tell your son to open his eyes. Or I close them permanently. Maya looked at Kaelen. They exchanged a look, a micro-expression of communication forged in trauma. Trust me. Kaelen lowered his rifle slowly. You win, Julian, Kaelen said. Take the money. Just give us the boy. I intend to, Julian laughed. Once the door is open. Maya, tell him. Maya stepped forward. Noah, baby. It's okay. Listen to me. Noah opened his tear-filled eyes, looking at her. Look at the red light, Maya whispered. Just like a video game. Win the level. Noah sniffled. He looked into the scanner. A beam of red light swept over his eye. Verification complete. Bloodline confirmed. The massive gears of the vault door groaned. Dust fell from the ceiling as the 10-ton circle of steel began to rotate. Yes. Julian shouted, his greed overtaking his caution. He shoved Noah's chair over, sending the boy crashing to the floor, and ran toward the opening door. Noah! Maya dropped her gun and sprinted to her son, shielding his body with hers. Kaelen didn't run to them. He ran toward the vault control panel on the wall. Kaelen, no. Julian screamed, turning around as he realized his mistake. Julian was standing in the threshold of the vault, staring into the dark cavern of wealth. But Kaelen wasn't entering. He was standing by the emergency override lever. You wanted the legacy of the old king? Kaelen roared, his eyes wild. You can be buried with it. He slammed the lever down. But Julian was fast. He raised his gun and fired wildly. A bullet struck Kaelen in the leg. He went down to one knee, groaning, but he kept his hand on the lever. No. Julian tried to run back out, but the gears reversed. The massive door began to swing shut faster this time. Julian was trapped in the doorway. He had a split second to choose. Jump back into the vault or be crushed by the door. He jumped back. The door slammed shut with a boom that shook the foundations of the earth. Lockdown initiated. Silence fell over the room. Kaelen slumped against the wall, clutching his bleeding leg. Maya frantically untied Noah, checking him for injuries. "Mom? Did we win?" Noah whispered, trembling. Maya hugged him so tight she thought she might break him. "Yes, baby. We won." She looked over at Kaelen. The ghost was smiling. 6 months later. The sun didn't often shine in Seattle, but when it did, it turned the Puget Sound into a sheet of liquid gold. Maya sat on the terrace of the rebuilt penthouse. The glass had been replaced with reinforced polycarbonate, and the security system was now an AI of her own design. She was watching the garden Kaelen had installed on the roof. It was chaotic wildflowers and vegetables growing in unorganized patches. Noah was kneeling in the dirt, explaining the Fibonacci sequence of a sunflower to a very patient listener. Kaelen sat on a garden bench, listening intently. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, his scars visible in the sunlight. He wasn't the ghost today. He was just Dad. "See?" Noah pointed. "The spiral is perfect math." "Everything is math," Kaelen agreed, handing Noah a trowel. "Even dirt." Maya stood up and walked over to them. She rested her hand on Kaelen's shoulder. He reached up and covered her hand with his, squeezing it. The platinum ring on her finger glinted in the sun. "Vance called," she said softly. "The board approved the merger. The iron ports are officially legitimate. No more gray market." "Boring," Kaelen joked, looking up at her. "What will I do with all my free time?" "I have a few ideas," Maya smirked. Noah stood up, wiping dirt on his pants. "Dad, can we go to the arcade? You promised you'd beat my high score on Tetris." Kaelen groaned, standing up with a slight limp, a permanent reminder of the vault. "I said I would try, Noah. Your reflexes are unnatural." "It's just an algorithm," Noah said breezily, running toward the elevator. "Last one, there is a rotten egg." Kaelen watched him run. The haunted look that used to live in his eyes, the grief for his lost brother, was gone. It had been replaced by something fierce and warm. He turned to Maya, pulling her into his arms. He kissed her slow and deep, claiming her soul just as he had promised. "You realized we're broke, right?" Maya teased against his lips. "You left $5 billion in that vault." Kaelen shrugged. "It was blood money. It belonged in the dark." He looked at Noah, who was pressing the elevator button impatiently. "I have everything I need right here," Kaelen whispered. "I swore an oath to protect this family, Maya. And I intend to keep it for the rest of my life." Maya smiled, resting her head against his chest, listening to the steady, strong beat of his heart. "I know," she said. "I love you, ghost. I love you, wife." The elevator dinged and the family stepped inside, the doors closing on the past and opening to a future that was finally truly safe.